Welcome to our virtual MPC site recommendation first virtual meeting. This is a webinar style virtual open house. And so we are doing all these community engagement meetings in an open house format. My name is Daniela Quesada. I am the city architect for the city of El Paso. I'm going to start with the market assessment portion of the feasibility study that was done for the MPC. Now, the market assessment was very important because the methodology included gathering data points from various areas, including stakeholders, looking at the local market conditions, looking at the competitive landscape in our region, matching that with some comparable benchmarking, so looking at case studies, talking to promoters and looking at potential estimated utilization, looking at building program evaluation, the types of financial projections we could anticipate from a facility, and what the economic and fiscal impacts of said facility would be for the city. You could see here that the key takeaways from our demographic and socioeconomic characteristics are the following. We have a very young population, and that's great because that means that we have a strong base from which to draw for entertainment events. We also have high diverse in our community, which means that we can draw from various types of events, not just one certain type of event. And the fact that our region, so our market region includes Juarez, is very exciting because we are counting with not just our population, but with our sister cities population as well. Important to note also, though, is that we are a low-income community, which means that we don't have the same kind of disposable income as maybe other cities our size have available for spending on entertainment events. You could see here some of the main promoters and stakeholders that gave us important input. And again, the key takeaways from their input is that they do see a strong market need for a new venue. They really indicated a desire for this new modern venue to be flexible enough to host a variety of different events and at different capacities. That's very important. There really is very limited competition, so this was exciting to promoters. And they indicated that what they would really like to see is a mid-sized, flexible venue with a capacity ranging anywhere from 6,000 and 8,000, or second to that, a larger arena with a capacity from 10,000 to 14,000. Another important input from promoters where they find El Paso is key because it is situated in the routes that current tourists take between the Dallas, Austin, and Phoenix corridor. And so right now we're being skipped over because we just don't have the types of venues that promoters are looking for the shows that they are currently taking across the corridor. And so looking at the competitive landscape, you can see that we do have entertainment venues in the region. However, there's gaps. So we have a gap in the mid-sized modern venue range. So we don't have any facilities that fill this gap. We also don't have a large-scale modern venue. So the large-scale venues that we do have, they're not preferred by promoters because, again, they lack the type of back-of-house infrastructure that these new modern shows really are seeking. And so in looking at this very initial information, they started providing us with building program scenarios. And so you could see versus, or comparing, excuse me, an arena versus a flexible hybrid venue, looking at different ranges of capacity and size and what that estimated project cost is. And so following on the two different models that the consultants looked at, the flexible hybrid venue, the utilization we could expect out of that is primarily concerts versus the arena, which would be mostly non-ticketed events or half non-ticketed events, and they would really rely on more sporting events. And you could see again in the boards, a closer breakdown of the types of events and utilization that we would get out of each type of venue. But you could see that they're very close in the total number of events that we would get. We would actually get a few more from the flexible hybrid venue. You could see that we were provided with the kind of information we would need in order to create supporting program for whichever venue we chose to go with. You could see that parking infrastructure would be greater for an arena type venue. The flexible hybrid venue would need less parking, but we get just a really good point of data for the types of concessions, bathrooms, the types of club seats, premium seating, all the different kinds of amenities we could anticipate for each one of those. And this is all very important because then it helps us look at a very high level financial pro forma and what we can anticipate as far as expenses and revenue out of each one of these models. And so broken down, you could see the net operating income for an arena for 12,000 seat capacity, a hybrid venue for 8,000 seat capacity, split 50-50 with 4,000 indoor and 4,000 outdoor, and the same 8,000 seat capacity flexible hybrid venue, but with additional seating indoor. So 6,500 indoor seating and 1,500 outdoor seating. And based on what the total cost of each would be and the economic and fiscal impact over a 32-year period, the consultants really recommended that we move forward with flexible hybrid facility A. This is what's within our current budget for the city to execute. So we can meet this construction cost for the whole project. However, they do point out that similar venues, again, looking at the two different models, have a public-private partnership structure. That means that aside from just public funds, private funds came into the project to make it a reality. And that is actually the structure the consultants for the feasibility study are recommending, that we do enter into some public-private partnership in order to open up opportunities to supplement our current funds, which stand at a little over $160 million left in the bond project. You'll recall that voters approved the project in 2012 for a total of $180 million. And after all the different expenses, we have $162 million left. And so what do we mean by an arena versus the flexible hybrid facility? So we have included two key benchmark studies. So these are just to give you an idea of the type of real life scenarios that come closest to what we would have here in El Paso. And so the first example I'll cover is the arena model. This is the PPL Center in Allentown, Pennsylvania. It opened in 2014, has a seating capacity of up to 10,500. And the whole project costs $177 million. There's obviously pros and cons to going with this model. Obviously, an arena can host mostly sports events, but also entertainment and third-party events. And it includes the more traditional premium seating options that the communities are familiar with. And it could become the host to a professional or amateur sports tenant. Some of the cons of the arena model include, first, the project cost. It's very high, not just to construct the project, but the operating costs as well. It takes up a much larger footprint, so we're looking at urban context. We have to be very careful about the site design. Again, it's more sports-oriented than concert-oriented, which means that we can anticipate a lot less concerts coming to the city if we were to move with an arena model. And then the other con is actually that what we heard from promoters is that this is not their preferred venue type. And so the PPL, actually, you could see all the different kinds of events that it can host. It's more than just one arena. It's part of a mixed-use development. It's part of a 5-acre site, actually in downtown Allentown. It was partially financed through a neighborhood improvement zone. But even with that, the PPL in recent years has reported a modest operating loss. So this is important. We're here to learn from the lessons of other cities and then make, the most informed decisions moving forward. Looking at then the hybrid model, the comparable facility is the Toyota Music Factory in Irving, Texas. This facility opened in 2017. It has a seating capacity of 4,000 indoor, 4,000 outdoor. The cost was $50 million. And then again, the pros to this type of facility is that it's the most preferred model that we heard from promoters. It has a really high level of utilization across a wide range of event types. And the reason for that is that it could essentially be at full capacity, an 8,000 seat entertainment venue, but it could also morph and host and completely enclosed indoor show while simultaneously hosting a completely separate outdoor show. And you can see some examples of similar setups in some of the images provided in the board. Now, there are, some cons to this model as well. So for example, we really have a limited potential for sporting or non-ticketed events. This would mainly be geared towards family shows and entertainment types of events. The Music Factory is also not a standalone facility. It's part of 17-acre mixed-use entertainment complex. And the full complex with all the supporting program was actually $173 million. It does accommodate year-round utilization. A lot like the PPL, part of the project was funded through a tax increment financing, and then the other half was funded through private investment. So this is an example of kind of a P3 agreement, making the project a reality. And you could see here included in the board, we just have additional information. It's not that these were the only two we looked at, but these were the ones that we felt were more close to what we can realize here in El Paso. But we have some additional benchmark studies included in the board as well. And then moving on to the community engagement part of the feasibility study. We had some really important input gathered from the community during various engagement events. We started through a series of meetings or workshops through focus groups with our steering committee, which was comprised of local community leaders, downtown business owners, and A&E professionals. During a series of the two focus group sessions, they were instrumental in providing us with the guiding design principles for the project. Now, this is for the project as a whole, not necessarily attached to any site. So really emphasizing that the project needed to be authentic, it needed to be integrated, generative, flexible, and vibrant to the community was very important. You could also see that we had two very large and well-attended public meetings. One was a hybrid meeting. The other was an open house meeting. This is where the community had the opportunity to come and learn about the market assessment and some of the benchmark studies that I just walked you through, as well as give us input as to the types of events they'd like to see. But most importantly, the input really did provide the vision for the whole project, which really communicated to us the community's desire to have a project that supports our local community, is integrated into our community, and it's a place for not just the community, but visitors alike to celebrate in El Paso. We had a lot of participation in our online survey, which was launched in September of 2022, and it was active through mid-October. We had over 1,500 survey participants. This is where we got some really key input as far as preference for integrating outdoor events and existing urban context into the project. And so you can look at in detail in your own time at the types of questions that were asked. We provided imagery. We had all the results posted. They're still posted online. So you can see we had representation from everywhere in the community from all districts. So I invite you to take a closer look at this board on your own time. I'll just go very briefly over the last two remaining boards, which is the newest work that the community may not be as familiar with. So jumping onto the alternative site selection, on January 3rd of last year, council did give the directive to abandon the previous project site and then task city staff with identifying an alternative site within city-owned facilities. And so the same consultant group that was doing the feasibility study then invested potential sites within the downtown and uptown area map. You will recall that the bond language specifies that the MPC has to be located within downtown. Because council recently adopted the downtown, uptown, and surrounding areas plan, our downtown footprint has expanded as per that plan. And so looking at potential sites, Gensler actually investigated a total of 13, but this is including the original project site. And out of those 13, when looking at a set of criteria determined by the feasibility study, so that's what determined the size of the facility, or size range of the facility, as well as some of the input that we got from the community, specifically the guiding design principles. They really narrowed it down to 4 potential sites as being the most feasible. And those sites were then looked at more closely through a SWOT analysis, where each site is individually analyzed for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And just to walk you very quickly through what those were, one of the sites considered, Site C, is at it's immediately adjacent to the Convention Center and Abraham Chavez Theater. The key takeaway from this is that it was the most compressed site and would require all new land acquisition because the city of El Paso does not own any of the parcels for this site. For Site H, which is directly abutting City Hall building on Florence and Texas Avenue, the key takeaways from the SWOT analysis on this site were that we would require additional site acquisition. We would only own part of the site. We would also have to close part of the right-of-way or street closure. And this would be very disruptive to City Hall functions. The other site considered, Site M, which is actually on the very edge of our downtown boundary on Cotton and Texas. After the SWOT analysis, the key takeaways included that this would require all new land acquisition. The site seemed very isolated from the rest of the activity and momentum that we see in downtown. And there was no parking infrastructure. We would have to rely almost exclusively on on-street parking for this site. And then looking at Site A, the Union Depot site, looking at a quick overview of the SWOT, you could see that the strengths and opportunities far outweigh the weaknesses and the threats. And I'll go through in more detail what all these strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats were. But really quickly, the consultants compared next to each other on a series of criteria, again, determined by the feasibility study, how each site scored when compared to each other. And so using criteria such as walkability, proximity to food and beverage amenities, parking infrastructure, speed to market or ease of land acquisition, risk management. So in other words, we weren't infringing on significant buildings or, street closures. And then sense of place, you could see that the Union Station or Union Depot site scored the highest. The score was from 1 to 10, 1 being the lowest. And you can see that would be closer to the red scale and 10 being the highest with the green scale. So this is the site comparison heat map that was done for all sites. If you're more of a visual person, we also provided a spider map. This is the exact same criteria. And you could see that the site that takes up the most surface area within the graph scores the highest points. So again, the Union Station was the highest scoring. And so let's look more closely at the Union Depot site. You all are well aware that it is the site of the historic Union Depot Station, a Daniel Burnham building. We are not proposing that the facility take up any part of the existing building, but rather be situated in the back portion of the site. The site is almost 13 acres large. And so we have ample space in the back. This has actually historically been an industrial site. And so we actually see a great opportunity for brownfield remediation. And so looking at the strengths, for starters, it is city owned, which means that the speed to market for the project would be right there. It's within walking distance to entertainment and ample parking infrastructure. It's also a culturally distinguished site for the reasons I just named, the Union Depot Station. And again, the opportunity of not just the brownfield remediation, but then also incorporating the Union Depot Station through adaptive reuse and having supporting programming go into that building makes this site a sustainability champion. And some of the opportunities of the site, or the most important opportunities, because there were more than just these, is that the venue then becomes an anchor to reinforce the area as an entertainment district. It's going to help drive economic development and growth, not just for the surrounding businesses, but for downtown as a whole. We saw a great opportunity to actually partner with the railroad provider in the site, so we could provide a unique guest experience and branding opportunity for people to take the train into the MPC for their favorite show. Also, the fact that it's in close proximity to the convention center allows the city the opportunity to create additional convention center space and expand its events from one facility to the next. And so looking at the weaknesses and threats, which we'll really refer to as challenges, there were really just two main ones. The fact that it is an isolated site, or I should say landlocked site. And so accessing it, egress from the site is isolated to one side. This is something that could easily be addressed through the site design. And so we feel confident that that challenge is easily surmountable. The other two challenges were that we have current tenants and we have lease agreements in place. But as I mentioned, we would love for Amtrak to remain and help us, again, create this amazing, unique opportunity for a facility that has a working, a functioning train station. We have First Transit and Greyhound. Both of these have, in preliminary conversations with them, have shown zero complaint in terminating leases and relocating to maybe a more strategic site that consolidates some of the bus facility services for downtown. And we also have Texas Tech as a tenant, and we don't see any reason why, since they occupy the Union Depot building, the historic building, for us to have to terminate the lease with them. So again, Amtrak and Texas Tech would be our remaining tenants in the site. And then the last challenge really is that we know that historically there were environmental impacts. Again, it's been an industrial site for many, many years. And in 1990, there was a leak of diesel and gasoline from the bus-related uses. And the city has been working to address the soil contamination from 1991 to 2008. And so there were a series of remediation strategies and activities that took place so that TCEQ actually granted closure for all the cases in 2009. Understanding that the impacts were left in place and they were not moving. So in other words, the site has always been safe to use up to this point. The only danger or the only threat, why it was listed as a threat, was really understanding how we could develop the site. And so when construction and excavation started, what would the city have to prepare for? And so council gave us the directive to proceed with a phase 2 environmental site assessment for the site. And the findings, again, it was nothing new. The city was obviously very familiar with the history, including the history of the contamination. But we did find several impacts still in place. They include 5 large underground storage tanks for fuel, 40,000 gallon fuel tanks. These 4 of these have been decommissioned under TCEQ criteria. Only 1 is still active, and it is servicing the active bus facility. We also saw some chemicals that are stored in the site that again service the bus use. There's electrical infrastructure. We saw that groundwater was really only encountered out of the 31 borings, only in 5, and they were at really great depths of 31 to 35 feet. And so we don't really anticipate that we're going to have to excavate to those depths. So that was very good news from the study. And then, of course, there were also no volatile organic compounds that were identified either. And so really, in summary, when looking at remediating the site and developing it, what we have to take great care of is creating a worker safety plan. So when all excavations happen, that soils are properly removed. We know where all the majority of the impacts are. They have to do with the places where the leaks actually happened. And so the range of costs of removing all of the different impacts that are still left, and again, the majority of these are the things we already know, the underground storage tanks, the chemicals that are in the site, and any soil that we excavate during the construction, ranges from 600,000 to 2.7 million. The reason that is such a large range is because we don't have a facility design. So in other words, we don't even know where within the site the footprint of the facility will be yet. So once we can move forward, if we do move forward with a design, this cost, this range will narrow down. And the 2.7 million is actually the worst case scenario. Because we have so many unknowns in the form of no design yet, we have added a 50% contingency to buffer for all of those unknowns. And when looking at the cost of remediation, 2.7 million being the worst case scenario, that is actually significantly less than the cost of acquiring new properties, for example, in the other sites that the consultants considered. And so important, again, to the project is this opportunity for not just brownfield remediation, which just for everyone's benefit is the act of removing or sealing off points of contamination within a property in order for the property to be used again without health concerns. This is something that opens the city up for potential grant opportunities. Again, it's a sustainability champion type of project. And then it also allows us to continue investing in our historic buildings. So currently, Sun Metro is going after a grant application with the Texas Historical Commission to refurbish or replace all of the historic windows in the Union Depot. So the grant is for a total of $100,000. And so again, just to kind of close off the general presentation, the site appropriateness for the project criteria, it is city owned. So the speed to market is right there. It's a great brownfield remediation opportunity, as well as the adaptive reuse of one of our architectural gems in the city. It's going to accommodate the facility that the feasibility study indicated we can afford to build. And it could potentially accommodate a larger facility if we were to identify a potential partner through a P3 agreement. It promotes economic development for local businesses, and it is within walking distance of other city amenities. So not just the convention center and Abraham Chavez Theater, but also our cultural campus with all our exciting new museums that are coming online, baseball stadium, also close to mass transit, the streetcar corridor. And then really the idea of this very unique opportunity to create an entertainment venue that we don't see anywhere else in the nation. And so that concludes the overview of all the information. It is a lot. So again, we really encourage everyone to take your time to go into the website and peruse the board's